The Kansas City Chiefs are off to a 5-0 start and are looking to do what no other NFL franchise has done, and that's three-peat. Despite several key injuries on the offense, they have prevailed through the first 5 games due in large part to the defense. They have just one game with 400 or more yards of offense, which came in Week 5 against the Saints, and they have committed at least one turnover in each of their first 5 games. Winning cures everything, of course, and the Chiefs know this best of all, but with the slow start to the year offensively combined with the amount of injuries they have, leads some people to believe that this is not their year. And the Kansas City Chiefs getting knocked out in the first round of the playoffs was a take from a subscriber, and in today's video, we will be responding to takes that were sent in a couple of weeks ago. We will do a few of these over the course of the season and even the offseason, and they are posted in the community tab, so be on the lookout to have your take featured in an upcoming video. This is a series continued from last year, and without further ado, let's begin. Mike McDaniel gets fired by the end of the 2024 season is a take from That Sandman, and there's a lot that goes into this take, or at least there's a lot of context needed. The Dolphins are in one of the toughest situations in football, and they have struggled in 2024, even prior to Tua getting hurt. Now, the Tua situation is unique because I would imagine we all feel the same way, or at the very least, feel very similar. And even when Tua got hurt against the Bills, Mike McDaniel said to Tua to go be the quarterback of your family. And I think that's pretty telling for the head coach of your organization to say that to your starting quarterback, who you just gave over $200 million to. And as I record this, Tua is planning on coming back, and this is per Adam Schefter. He expects to play again this season, but when Tua went down, the Dolphins' offense sputtered in the ensuing 3 games, and I don't think that should be a surprise. Maybe you didn't expect the offense to play as bad as they did during the Seahawks and Titans game in particular, but there's a reason that both Tyler Huntley and Skylar Thompson are backups, and it's because at best, they are the 33rd best quarterback in the league. And I don't think either of those guys are the best backup in the league, and there's several quarterbacks I would take over them, like Jameis Winston, Jacoby Brissett, Michael Penix, and Tyson Bagent, to name a few. So, while the Dolphins were not playing well in 2024, even when Tua was healthy, I don't think McDaniel should be fired because there's a lot out of his control. And at the end of the day, as simple as this idea is, Mike McDaniel can only coach who is on his team. Having said that, I would agree that he was disappointing through the first 5 games, and that the start to the Dolphins season was very underwhelming based on how they looked at times during the 2023 season. I mean, this team put up 70 points in one game last year, and obviously 70 was never going to be sustainable, but this video is being released on October 19th, meaning we are now closer to November than we are September, and the Dolphins have 60 total points on the year. If there is anybody that I think should be fired in the Dolphins organization, I think it's general manager Chris Grier. A lot of my frustration with the Dolphins is due in large part to how the roster is constructed. The offensive line isn't good, and they lost a couple of starters from their 2023 offensive line in Connor Williams and Robert Hunt, and replaced them with players who are not close to their level. And the results would be similar if you replace Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle with Brandon Powell and Rashad Bateman. They're not on the level of the other 2 guys. This was always going to be a problem with Tua as the starting quarterback because so much of Tua's game is predicated on timing. I know Dolphins fans on social media can get pretty loud with their opinions on Tua, but he's a solid quarterback that needs everything around him, and that's not intended to dismiss who he is as a player as much as it is to say that he needs a good interior offensive line to hold up, which, to be fair, every quarterback does, and receivers that have the chemistry with him, which Tyreek and Jalen clearly do. I would also ask the simple question of which replacement would come in with the aging roster and produce better results than Mike McDaniel, and I don't think the answer is anybody, and because of this, I don't think the Dolphins should fire Mike McDaniel. The Tennessee Titans have a second half turnaround and make the playoffs with a 9-8 record is a take from Mr. Pippin 7400, and it's a take that I disagree with for a couple of reasons. Right now, the Tennessee Titans are 1-4 after a 20-17 loss to the Colts. One of the main reasons that I disagree with this take is in the back half of their schedule, or at least moving forward because we're not quite halfway through the season, but from here on out, they have 4 very difficult road games, which are at Buffalo, at Detroit, at Houston, and at Washington. Those are not in order, by the way, and they don't play those teams in 4 consecutive weeks, but the point is, I don't think the Titans are going to win any of those games, which would have them at 8 losses already, and I don't think the Titans are going to win the other 8 games games and to really run the table. They also have a couple of difficult games in the other games as well. They play at the Chargers, they play home against the Vikings, and I think this team will at minimum have 9 losses, maybe even 10 in their first year under head coach Brian Callahan. There's a couple of reasons that I disagree with this take. One of the reasons is due to the quarterback play. Guys, Will Levis is not the answer. I was hopeful heading into the season that with the big arm and with the decisiveness that we saw at times throughout his rookie season, most notably the Falcons game, and even a couple of flashes during the Steelers game, that maybe the Titans have something here with Will Levis. But the more and more the games go on, it's clear the Titans don't trust Will Levis fully, and it's very, very frustrating. During the Colts game, I wanted to see Will Levis air it out against a team that had just allowed over 350 yards to Trevor Lawrence, who, by the way, completed over 80% of his passes against this same Colts defense, and that was the only game in the first 5 that Trevor completed over 60% of his passes. So to have that huge uptick in production against this very bad Colts defense and against a Gus Bradley coach defense, well, I thought Calvin Ridley could have a big day, and I thought DeAndre Hopkins could have a big day too, and neither one of them did. And Will Levis's stat line for the game against the Colts, his passing yards number was only around 200 in the sports books, and I thought he could have cleared that easily considering Trevor Lawrence threw for over 350 yards against this team. But entering the fourth quarter, Will Levis had 72 passing yards, and that's a problem for a team that expected Will Levis to take a step, and obviously there hasn't been a step taken. If anything, it's been a step backwards. We know all about the turnover plays from Will Levis, whether it was the pick 6 against the Bears back in week 1, or whether it was a red zone turnover against the Jets in week 2 in a game, by the way, which Tennessee would go on to lose by a touchdown. So if he doesn't make the meme-worthy turnover play in week 2, maybe Tennessee wins that game, and maybe we're having an entirely different conversation. Week 3, the Packers came in, kicked their rear end. Jeff Hatley is a great defensive coordinator, and Jair Alexander made a terrific play on the pick 6 that Will Levis threw in week 3. I don't really think the Titans ever had a chance in that game. Week 4 against the Dolphins, I wouldn't put too much stock into that win, considering how bad the Dolphins offense was in that game, but a win's a win. Don't apologize for a win. But my point here is I don't think the Titans are going to run the table after these presumable 4 losses, which again are at Detroit, at the Bills, at Houston, and at Washington, and proceed to win 8 in a row to finish at 9-8. I don't think that's going to happen, and to be honest, I think the Titans have a very tough future ahead of them, because what are they going to do at the quarterback position? And the 2025 draft class isn't all that loaded at the quarterback position, and are the Titans going to pay somebody like Sam Darnold? Are they going to try and give him a Baker Mayfield type contract to try and lead the Titans to what he's done so far with the Vikings and hope they can get that same guy? I don't know. But all of this to say that I disagree with Mr. Pippen's take, that I don't think the Tennessee Titans are going to run the table, and that I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year. The Kansas City Chiefs getting knocked out in the first round of the playoffs is a take from Man Tequila, and there's a lot to unpack with this take. I don't think many people would disagree that the Chiefs are going to win the division. They're 5-0, and they already have a win over the Chargers. The win over the Chargers is big in the division race, and that's who I would consider Kansas City's biggest threat in the AFC West. I don't think a Bo Nix-led Broncos team is going to win the West, especially with the lack of weaponry they have around him, and the Raiders are not a good team. So in order for a team to beat the Chiefs in the wildcard round of the playoffs, they are going to have to go into Arrowhead and win. Period. And what I think is the craziest part about the Chiefs struggling for their standards through the first 5 games is they are still 5-0. We are at a point with Kansas City where people have Chiefs fatigue and people get sick of hearing how good they are and how they're destined to win another Super Bowl and everything else. But take the Bengals game back in week 2 for reference. Kansas City had no business winning that game, yet they came out on top. If you would have said entering the game that Cincinnati would win the turnover battle, win the time of possession battle, hold Kansas City to less than 300 yards of offense, and Patrick Mahomes would have one of the worst games of his career as he threw for just 151 yards and 2 interceptions in this game, I would have asked, how many points did Cincinnati win by? And I think a lot of people would have asked the same question. But whether it was the Bengals game or even the Chargers game and another one where the Chiefs didn't play their best, they still won. So when you take a look around the AFC and think about who's going to win each division, and this is of course barring major injuries, I think the Texans more than have the South locked up, and I don't think there's going to be a wild card team from the South. If Indy somehow makes the playoffs as a wild card, do you think Joe Flacco or Anthony Richardson, depending on who's starting at that point, is going into Kansas City and winning? Because I don't. As for the other divisions, I think the winners will be Buffalo and Baltimore, and at this point, the 3 wildcard teams would probably be a combination of Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and maybe the New York Jets as the other wildcard team. And if any of these teams do not make the playoffs, and we have either the Chargers or the Colts or anybody over these 3 teams, I think that would only hinder the chances of Kansas City getting beat in the wildcard round. And remember, just to beat the Chiefs, you are going to have to play your best game all season. This team has lost twice in Kansas City during the Patrick Mahomes era in the playoffs, and each time there was something crazy that happened just for them to lose by 1 possession. The Chiefs do not get beat by a lot, and it's because of how good of a team they are. I know people have Chiefs fatigue, but I don't think they're going to be a wildcard exit, because at the end of the day, remember, this is a 5-0 team, and there's a lot of question marks surrounding this team. Everyone knows they haven't played their best football yet, not even close, yet they're 5-0. A 5-0 start for other teams like the Minnesota Vikings, for example, is an elating feeling, but for the Chiefs, there's a lot more questions than answers at this point in time, and if they've proven anything over the past 5 years, it's that they will get it figured out. The disparity between O-line and D-line talent will widen every year, causing defenses to dominate offenses a bit more every year until the NFL creates even more rules that favor the offense, is a take from Languid Landscape Lad 2239, and this is a take that I really want to dive into because this is not just an NFL question or an NFL take. I think this goes all the way back really to high-level high school and then, of course, through college. So right now in collegiate football, and I'm talking Division I, like the premier Division I, the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Ohio States. I'm not talking, like JC and D3 and all that. What I'm referring to is Division I football, and within Division I football, there is the NIL, and I'm all for players getting paid. And if you think about it, whenever players would go on scholarships, it was really a business transaction anyway. Hey, we'll give you this free scholarship if you come play football, and if you work out and wake up at 5 a.m., and if you do everything that, really normal students are doing. I mean, it's really a business transaction anyway. They're just getting a chance to earn a education at whatever college, right? So with the NIL and with players getting a chance to earn money, which again, I'm all for, as I don't think it's exactly fair for, suits to earn millions and billions of dollars for the university and even to line their own pockets while players are on the field, potentially not walking again. Granted, that's a very drastic scenario, but that is a possibility every time a player takes the football field. So within this, and within the gap between defensive and offensive line, when you sit back and think about it, and you actually think, okay, is it easier to run directly at somebody as fast as you can and really go on the offensive, when you are rushing the quarterback? Or is it easier to have a 250-pound man run directly at you that can probably run a 4.5 or 4.6 40 and probably bench 225 pounds 25 or 26 times? The reality is it's much easier for a pass rusher to drive right through an offensive tackle and to be on the offensive rather than a offensive tackle stop a 260-pound or 270-pound man sprinting directly right at them. And then if they want to do a club rip, or if they want to, go up and under, or if they want to do a swim move, whatever the case may be, it's always going to be easier for the pass rusher. Now, to dive into this take and why I think it's going to be probably 4 or 5 years before the offensive line really comes back around, if not further, is because NIL plays into this. And I think there's a large reason, or a big reason rather, that a lot of coaches from college right now are going to the NFL, and it's because they don't want to deal with NIL and everything along with that. And the ramifications of NIL are coaches having to worry about players leaving because they get more money elsewhere. And if they get more money elsewhere, why wouldn't they go to another college? So within all of this, there's not a lot of time to actually coach football and for the players to actually get better. And I think we dealt with COVID age in terms of draft prospects and having older draft prospects over the past couple of years due to the ramifications of COVID. But I think now we're going to have the ramifications along the offensive line of dealing with NIL and players not getting the coaching and the development that they would have in the past 5 or 10 years. And I think that kind of all plays into this. So I think that's a very valid take. And I don't think there's going to be any rules that the NFL will implement to give the offensive line an advantage? What are they going to say? Hey, TJ Watt, you're not allowed to bull rush a guy. You have to go around the edge, and then that guy can kick step out. That way he has an easier rep against you. It's not going to work like that. So I think this is going to be a multi-year thing before we really see it go back to it being even. And again, from a pure physics standpoint, it's always going to benefit the pass rusher because they are on the offensive whenever they are trying to go after the quarterback. And it's going to take a couple of years because it always benefits the pass rusher to be on the offensive. And there's a reason that it takes pass protectors a couple of years to really develop. And guys like Quentin Nelson who come in and dominate right away, and even Rashawn Slater at the left tackle position, those guys are the outliers rather than the normal. And I think a good example of this was Paris Johnson for the Cardinals, who struggled at times during his rookie year in 2023 and is having a great bounce back year in 2024. So it's going to take guys a couple of years to really develop at the NFL level, and teams that are now going to invest in first round tackles, unless they are a Joe Alt or an Olu fashion, when Olu's even had a transition period to the NFL, and I think he'll be fine, and Talisi Fuaga has as well, but unless they are that blue chip Joe Alt, I really wouldn't expect there to be many great tackles as rookies. And I think we're going to be approaching a period where offensive tackles especially are going to need kind of that redshirt year, or at least a couple of games before they really settle in, because it's not that it's unfair because they are getting paid to do a job too, but it's not going to be favorable for an offensive tackle to go in, NFL debut, starting at right tackle, and say, all right, buddy, 45 pass protection reps against TJ Watt on an island. Good luck. In the middle of his prime, for a player that's going to be a future Hall of Famer. Good luck. Coming right out of college, who did not get the development that normal offensive tackles would have received 5 or 10 years ago. So all of that to say, I don't think there's a rule that there's going to be able to be implemented. I think this starts at the collegiate level, and I think it's going to be a problem that we're going to see trickle into the NFL level. And again, I'm all for players getting paid in college, especially with how much they put their bodies on the line and how much the suits make and all of that. But there's ramifications with the NIL and with how much of a true wild west the NIL at times can be. The next take is one from Jacob CZ, and he says Jameson Williams will go crazy against the Washington Commanders in the divisional round, and I am all for Jameson Williams' breakout year. I've been a big Jameson guy since back in his rookie season back in 2022, and his first career reception was against the Vikings. It was a 41-yard touchdown, and we even saw him have a big 67-yard touchdown get called back against the Packers in the Week 18 game of that year. And for Jameson to finally put it all together, I am incredibly happy for him. Now, to say he's going to go crazy in the divisional round against the Commanders is a very just bold take, because that's going to require the Lions and the Commanders both being in the divisional round at the same time. It's not enough to say the divisional round, it's the divisional round against the Commanders. So I feel like I'm going to disagree with that, because that would require the Commanders to win a playoff game. That would require them to, in this scenario, go on the road and win a divisional game against another team. But if Washington shows up at Ford Field in the divisional round with the lack of secondary help they have, I would agree with this take that if they play, that Jameson Williams would absolutely feast. So that's going to wrap up today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as it helps the channel tremendously. And we recently hit 160,000 subs, and I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. So until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.